We've already mentioned that for traditional media or conventional media, you just use applications on a computer, doesn't need to be a Mac. There are commercial applications, there are applications that's bundled with the machine, and there's free and open source software, all right? This is for media, okay? This is for digital content. But once again, if you want to write an application for the iPhone that is interactive, it means just now when you touch the surface of the water, it ripples. There are two ways and only two ways. The first is not to have the functionality on the phone at all. You just have a website which has the functionality. Examples, Facebook, Gmail. All these are applications which are not on the device but on the internet. Right? That's why when you see that any computer, you open Facebook is your account. Great. But web applications cannot have certain features which is in the iPhone. It can't make use of the GPS locator. It can't make use of the digital compass. It can't make use of the accelerometer. So that in some games for the iPhone, you actually tilt the iPhone to control because there's no API to touch that. So for that, you have to learn Xcode, Objective-C programming. Okay? So once the application has been created, how do you distribute? Again, if you're using media, you can use podcasting. Or you can use Apple's built-in solution, which is Podcast Producer. There is end-to-end. All the lecturer needs to do is press a button, records the lecture, and then it just loads it up onto a server and anybody can download. But if you want to do applications, interactive applications, you have to use the iTunes Store. All right? You have to sign a contract with Apple and you use the iTunes Store. But once the application is in the iTunes Store, you can download it using iTunes, and iTunes is available for the Mac and the PC, and you don't have to manually move the applications over, it auto-syncs, right? And as a developer, it's protected because when you download the application, it's digitally signed. So you can't copy the application onto a thumb drive, copy to another computer and install. So Apple does actually protect you as the software developer, right? So as a business, let's see what other people have done. How much you have to spend and how much you will stand to gain. All right? So how much you have to spend? First of all, you need to buy a Mac because it does not run on Windows. The SDK doesn't run on Windows. The good news is that Macs are not as expensive as they used to be. All right? You can go to Apple's online store, store.apple.com/my. You can see that the CPU, if you just want to buy a Mac CPU, the price for educators can be as low as 2,099, 2,000 ringgit, right? And you don't need to get an iPhone. You can make do with an iPod Touch, which is less than 1,000 ringgit. I think it's about 700 something only now, right? Sorry? Because you see at the moment the SDK is only available for Apple products, and the iPhone itself is an Apple product. But if you don't want to buy an iPhone because you need to pay a lot, you need to pay the contract charges, you buy an iPod Touch. Because iPod Touch is just 770 ringgit. Functionality is almost the same. Okay? And you need to pay a $99 standard iPhone developer program account. This is so that after you have developed your program, you can transfer it to your device for testing. You don't pay the $99 US, you can't do this. You will only play with the simulator, which is what you're seeing on screen. Okay? But once you have done this, and you have tested your application on the device, you can submit it to the Apple App Store. And once it's on the Apple App Store and you have signed all the necessary agreements, it will be available to 77 countries. It will be available to the sum total of 50 million devices. Okay? So anywhere there's an iTunes Store, they can click and they can see your application. The other interesting factor here is that 70% of the revenue goes back to the developer. Right? So that means if your application sells for $1, and you set the price, by the way, not Apple. If you want to sell the application for 1,000 ringgit, fine, no problem. I don't know how many people actually buy it for that amount of money, but then again, it's up to you. 70% of the total revenue goes back to you. Sell it for 1 ringgit, 70 cents come back to you. Sell it for $1 or 99 cents, and the most common price point is 99 cents. It goes back to the developer. All right? And people have been taking advantage of this. If you go to Pavilion, you will be able to see one booth by Gameloft, and you will see Gameloft's games there, and they have some very nice games there. 20 games already on the store, 2 million paid downloads in just a few months. And the poster child for success is this guy, Steve Demeter. He is actually unemployed. He didn't have a job. Bought some books, learned how to program iPhone, And he was fast enough to release his program about the time the OS 2.0 software came out, which allowed programs to be installed. And he made that amount of money in the first 2 months. And now he's doing this as a full-time business. Okay? So that's kind of interesting. Now, I understand that some of you here, or maybe all of you here, are only familiar with your CS4, Dreamweaver, and so on. That's all right, because we have, MDEC has a lot of resources available. For instance, if you want somebody to teach you how to do the programming, there are two ways of doing it. The first way, which is the one that is taught by Chris Hong, and he's the official guy, he's already been engaged by MDEC to do the classes, he will teach you Objective-C. But if your application doesn't need to use things like the accelerometer, it doesn't need to use things like the GPS and so on, you have a web application that you want to kind of like convert into an iPhone application, then you can talk to Bikesh, because he's more familiar and he knows the skill sets of web developers. So you can talk to him. Right. Second, you design the artwork, you do the artwork, you design all the digital assets, other people do the programming logic. Okay? Other people do the programming logic. So these are two people who can help you with your application. Which means, just say for instance you want to do an interactive comic. You draw the comic, you send the artwork over. They will then write the application so that you can go through the pages of the comic on the phone. Alright? So this is another way of getting your application out the door. The third way is, of course, do everything yourself. I don't want to share my intellectual property with anyone. I want to learn myself. So you can go to iPhone Developer Center, and this is where you can see all the resources available to iPhone programmers. You can, if your college wants, they can also apply for this program. This is only open for universities. So iPhone Developer University program, it gives you one big advantage. If you are teaching iPhone as a curricular subject, and you have lots of students, and you have all the Macs already, but when they want to install onto the iPhone or iPod Touch, it costs $99 USD per student, which is expensive. So under this program, iPhone Developer University program, that fee is waived. So you can have 200 students all learn how to program iPhone, and when they want to transfer to the device, they don't have to pay. Okay? So this is something that you can apply for. And one of the places that's already received the iPhone Developer University program status is Stanford. Stanford has a complete online course, 14 weeks at this website. You can download all the podcasts from here. So they will teach you on your own. Okay? People who have seen this, is very comprehensive. They give you assignments. They also have people from the industry come in and talk about what it needs to be successful on the App Store. So worthwhile, very worthwhile. Yeah, you just go cs193p.stanford.edu. I think if you have your computers in front of you, you can just hit the URL. It should work. So you see the assignments, everything is there. Alright, so that's my email address, shah@mac.com. If you need to contact me, this is the official email address.